Hello, friends. Susan Axelrod here, the Confidence Coach. Welcome to the Confidence Zone. If you know me, if you follow me, if you've worked with me anytime over the past 20 years, you know that I'm all about legacy. It was in 2004 that I got my first business card with the phrase, "What will your legacy be?" printed on it. Shortly after that, I got thinking cards that were beautiful postcard size with a beautiful picture. At the top, it said, "What will your legacy be?" Underneath, it said, "How do you want to be remembered?" And then underneath that, in a little bit smaller type font, it said, "How will you be remembered?" I had these postcards for so long. I used to hand them out like candy. I was a big networker. I would go to conferences, I would go to meetings, and I would take my postcards out and hand them to people. Or in the day, I would hand out my business card. I actually had business size cards laminated. Just one sentence, one question: what will your legacy be? This was before the days of websites. There was no URL on that card. I still have one of those laminated cards pinned to my bulletin board. Over time, as I moved forward in my career in philanthropy as a planned giving officer, basically I became a philanthropy advisor, to tell you the truth. I would work with people to help them understand that legacy is not about your children in my world, because I learned so much having conversations with so many people at that time, so many older people, that sometimes things go badly with your children. It's a reality of life that sometimes relationships don't work out that well, or something goes awry. And if you take responsibility for your child's greatness, then if your child fails, that's sort of on you as well. And so I developed this construct over many years, decades of this work, that your legacy is not about your children that you leave behind. After all, everybody doesn't even have their own birth children, but rather, as I see it, it's about the way you lived your life. It's about the memories you created, the experiences you've had, the experiences you've shared, the experiences and opportunities you've given others. It's about the impact that you have made along the way. As you grow and evolve and mature yourself along the way, you basically glean wisdom, lessons learned, if you will, and that's where your legacy actually lives. How do you live your life every day? How do you see the world? How do you interact with people in humanity, in a civil way, in a loving way, in an inclusive way? For me, that's what legacy is about. And so I'm here today to share the legacy of my own mother, Terry Lowenthal. Today is the 3rd anniversary of her passing. If you know me, you know I've spoken about this quite a bit. I was with her to the very end. My mother died just about a year after my father, and the legacy of both of my parents together were a child group. There's 4 of us siblings who have stayed together and stayed in a close-knit way. And so together we went through my father's passing and my mother's passing. I think about this all the time. Legacy work has been my life's work for nearly 30 years now, 25 years really. And so sometimes I wonder, what's the seminal thing? What's the most important thing that I learned from my mother? What's my mother's legacy? Like, what's the one thing? But the truth is, we're humans and we're multifaceted creatures, and we have souls deep in us, and the souls grow and change and evolve. So I'm also not about the black and white concrete anymore of, oh, there's one thing, there's just one thing. There's a million things, as there are to the facets of our being. But among the things that I think of as my mother's legacy was something my friends will know because I talk about this all the time. My mother had intellectual curiosity. While she didn't achieve ambitious things per se, as she herself would say, um, she had such great intellectual curiosity that made her equally attentive to a 9-year-old boy she might be sitting next to in an audience somewhere as to the political candidates she herself was questioning as a moderator for the League of Women Voters and everything in between. She could go to the Hoover Dam and look around and wonder at this amazing thing, how it was made. And she could sit in her chair and read a book about the history of our world and ask herself, deep questions there. She loved to open maps. Remember maps? She loved to open maps and look with curiosity at the geography of the world and many more things. So my mother's intellectual curiosity is something that truly inspires me. And then as we saw in the last years of her life, when she lived healthy and well, one of the things that we saw in her passing was how many people came out of the woodwork telling us how meaningful her connection with them was. Not just family members, but also friends from synagogue, friends in book groups, friends from the library she volunteered with, friends from college she volunteered with over many decades. And that also really inspired me. My mother was an understated person, sometimes quiet in her ways, sometimes very loud. um, but generally quiet in her ways. I would say more less overt in her impact. And so it was a little surprising when she died, how many people came out of the woodwork. You may have heard me say this before, especially me and my siblings. Some of us still have friends from high school or college, and some of them would say, oh, I remember conversations with your mother going back 30 years or 25 or even 40 or 50 years, to tell you the truth, because we're old now. And so that was something that I learned in her passing, and I'm not sure how much I really appreciated during her life. And so that lesson I've taken with me. Connecting with people is very important. I come here to connect with you, whether I know you in person or whether you find me by chance online. And sharing wisdom gleaned and gained is something that is profoundly a part of my own legacy. So today is a bittersweet day without a doubt. There's no question, but thank God we were so lucky. Mom lived healthy and well for a long life, and in the end, she died pretty quickly. She didn't have a long extended demise in suffering, and for that I'm so grateful. I'm emotional at how grateful I am for that, even though it was traumatic at the time. But since that time, through my grief coaching, my personal healing work, I've come to kind of transform that idea to say, thank you, God, for allowing my mother to live such a long and healthy and well life, having such an amazing impact on her family and friends. And in many ways, the organizations that she led will be forever transformed by her work there. And so I am really grateful for that. So I want to ask you yourself about aging, death, and dying. I want to ask you to consider this. Do you have a plan of any sort? Do you think about it? Do you face it? Or do you avoid it and deny that it will ever happen to me? Do you have your estate plans in place? Do you have an aging plan in place? Do the people who love you know where your things are? Do they know your passwords? Do they know what you want? Do they know how it is you want to see out the last years of your life? Do they know where you want to be buried? Let's talk about these things, friends. There's no cure for death. There's no cure. We haven't found a cure for it. It's going to happen to every single one of us, whether we want it or not, whether we're ready or not, and so on. And so I wanted today, on this very special day, in memory and in tribute of my mother, to come to you and have this little conversation and really speak with you about these things and invite you to protect your heart. I know I do understand facing one's own mortality is difficult, nearly impossible, as you get older, as I am. And my dear friend Debbie would say to me, she's a few years older than I am. She would say, yeah, as you get older, this happens. People get ill and you begin to lose the loved ones around you. And as it always turns out, my dear friend Debbie was, of course, exactly right. And so I have been working for these last years to develop a construct to say, let's talk about it, let's think about it, let's share about it. You don't have to go public like I do in this way, but to find some safe person in your family or friend group, or with a therapist or with a lawyer, or your financial advisor, to begin to share what you're thinking about, what's on your mind. I implore you to consider this, my friends. As I learned through the loss of my own husband, that seemed somewhat unexpected. You could be going along and thinking things will be going one way, and then all of a sudden things may change in a way you could never have foreseen and never have imagined. And so if we can, during times that are quiet in our lives, where things are sort of going along as they do, if we can take those times to really maybe think about these things, write about these things, discuss these things, say things out loud, release them, then maybe we can support those who love us later in life when they are faced with our illness or demise. So I hope that these words speak directly to you, your mind, your heart, and your soul, so that your body can be, just continue along in a well and healthy way, in balance, in wellness, in reality, not dreading, worrying, fearing, avoiding, or denying the inevitable. Okay, my friends, what will your legacy be? See you again soon in the Confidence Zone.